Good evening. Welcome to the preseason edition of Gridiron Gurus for the Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel. I'm Travis Lazarczyk, joined always by my colleague Drew Bonifant, and we have an all-star cast of guest stars this week, starting with Randy Whitehouse from the Sun Journal here, and coaches B.L. Lippert from Cony High School, and Mike Hathaway from Leavitt High School. Gentlemen, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Let's talk about some issues of facing high school football this season before we get going. Class E, we think we can all agree it was a kind of a success last year in getting some programs, some stability, and keeping them going. This year, it's grown by a few teams. I'll open it up to anybody. Is it good that Class E is growing, or is it a concern that there's more teams that maybe need that boost?
I mean, I think the surprising part was with the two teams that came on, Old Orchard Beach and Dirigo. Dirigo surprised me because that was a pretty stable program, a pretty consistent team. That wasn't a team that had been on hard times or down by the end at the bottom of the standings. So that was a bit of a surprise. But I mean, the fact that the league was a success last year, or that the division was a success last year, makes you think that these are teams that are working in the right direction. That's not just an emergency measure. But I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if Randy or the other coaches share my.
Well, I talked to Mike Barnum from the NPA a couple days ago about this, actually, and he says, it's done. The first season, it did what they wanted it to do, which is to give these programs some footing. Of course, now they've added schools like Freeport and Dirigo, as you mentioned, and the idea behind it is, of course, is to get these programs back up to Class D and Class C. And, those programs, from talking to Dirigo especially, they're very glad that it's there. Otherwise, they think they would not have a program this year. They might just have a JV schedule this year. So it seems to be doing what they wanted to do, but, I mean, we're also getting into discussions about 8-man football, so they're still looking for other ways to address these issues.
Yeah. Guys, do you have anything to add?
I just think if you're playing football, that's a good sign, and I know that they're probably a little disappointed they have to go that route to stay. I can imagine Coach Herslum's like, where are my guys? But when a school loses a program, it becomes pretty difficult to get it back because there's some cost associated with that, and all of a sudden you're doing budgets and like, hey, we got rid of football, that saves X amount of dollars, so it might take a little effort to get that restarted. It might not just be a 1 year, we get rid of it and it's coming back. So if you could keep it, and as Mr. Whitehouse mentions, 8-man football is being debated now, and whatever it takes to keep your program, I think most schools and most coaches would say, we just want to have football. We want it to obviously be in the class where we're supposed to be based on enrollment, but just keep the program alive because, you hope the numbers come back eventually. And, I guess that remains to be seen. It hasn't been a long enough, experiment here yet. So I think Mike would probably feel the same way. Just want to have football.
I mean, to keep them playing, and then in addition to that, I think the success is really going to be judged a couple of years down the road. And like a program like Freeport, do they bounce back, and can they go back to Class C and be somewhat competitive? And they actually have a nice, we saw them this summer over our 7-on-7 league. They have a nice little group of kids there. So, either a team like that getting back to a Class C status, or potentially in a couple of years, the success of a small school 8-man league, I think that would be fantastic. For those schools who are floating under, 250, 220 kids, 8-man football is a lot more viable, I think, for those guys.
Well, let's kind of bring that up. Randy, you mentioned it, and Coach Hathaway. Is 8-man a viable solution for some of these small schools in Maine?
I think it is, for sure. I mean, we've scrimmaged a little bit with Dirigo in the preseason. They came over with us in Winthrop, and I mean, they got 16, 17 guys. You can't last 11-man football, even in Class D, with that many guys. It's not going to happen. So, but if it's 8-man football, now you're talking 16, 17 guys. That works. And, with the school enrollments declining, it's not like we're going to get more kids coming out. We're either going to be stuck where we are, or the numbers are going to decrease. So I think it looks good.
I mean, my reaction is just that you hear that, it just makes you think like this is a drastic step. This can't this can't be a good sign, and that makes you feel like that it's going to be a completely different style game. And like we were kind of talking about it, and somebody said that it could feel like Canadian football or something like that.
Yeah.
But I guess that's not the point. The point is, if you can't make it work the way it is, you've got to find another option. You can't just beat your head against the wall and say no, 11-on-11. If you just don't have the numbers to support it.
Yeah, I want to know. Like a couple of years ago, 8-man was floated at some of the football committee meetings and coach meetings, and there was just an outcry. Absolutely not. We all want to play 11-man, and is what's caused this sudden realization to take a second look.
Well, I think there's still a stigma about 8-man football.
Yeah.
It's pretty prevalent in this state. People either haven't heard of it or have never watched it or participated in it. Anybody I've talked to that has been from a state that's had it says it's great. It's just as good as 11-man football.
Yeah.
But there is that perception, as Drew mentioned, it's CFL or arena football or something like that. And it's not real football. And that's a stigma that's really going to be, I think, tough to overcome.
Yeah, I know the only New England state that I know of that's tried it at all is Vermont. And a few years ago, they had a small 8-man league of teams that, like a lot of schools in Maine here now, are struggling to keep numbers up. And eventually, they phased it out because all those schools got their programs on solid footing and said, "Hey, we want to go back to 11-man." So maybe that would happen here in Maine. I don't think it's an end-all solution.
Man, with coaches like Coach Hathaway, offensive minds, you get down to 8 people, right? There's fewer guys on the field, man. You got some room to operate.
It's like when you get down to like 4-on-4 and hoops. Right. I can move around a little
Absolutely.
bit.
If you two found yourselves facing that, would you be almost excited by the idea of coaching a different style, or like you said, kind of seeing what things can work in a new format like that, or would it be intriguing at all?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wouldn't be excited because that's probably not a great sign for the strength of your program, but it'd be kind of interesting. I grew up playing 8-man football in in-house league. We had 8 guys, and 4 or 5 teams from Augusta played each other, so it's definitely a different style, of football. And I'm not sure the rules would be the same, but there's fewer guys out there. So, and I've seen some of the, like an E60 or something about a team in Iowa, and it just looks a little different because there's so much space. You break a tackle and you're pretty much gone, So it'd be interesting. I'm not sure I'd be excited by it, though.
I think from a program perspective, where the MPA didn't really sanction that Class E last year, and they didn't have a playoff, and it wasn't really a sanctioned league. If I'm running a program, I'd rather run an 8-man program that was sanctioned by the state and had a state championship than to drop down and play in Class E and know that there was no chance of playoffs and things like that. I would much rather be in that situation.
One thing that's been an issue in Maine high school football, probably as long as we've been playing Maine high school football, is competitive balance. I know you guys are in a couple leagues that are as competitively balanced as any in the state. BL in the Pine Tree Conference Class B, we were just talking, throw 5 or 6 of the teams in a hat and pull them out, and that might be the order. Your league, Coach, Class C South, is as competitive as they come this year. Why is it that the middle school-sized schools can seem to figure out how to be in competitive leagues, but then when you get to Class D, you see a lot of blowouts, and Class A, you see a lot of blowouts, the big schools and the smallest schools?
I'll go ahead and take it first. I think one of the things is when we made the extra class and went to have one, it evened out that ground in the middle, so there wasn't such a disparage in enrollment with some of those teams. But the teams that really didn't get affected were the ones at the top and the bottom. Now some teams who were maybe in the middle, in Class A, now they're kind of at the bottom because the only schools are bigger when they lost a few, to move down a class. And I think that that kind of effect was there. So and we've done a really good job, I think, with crossovers. In the middle between B and C, whereas in A, nobody really wants to cross over with them because B and C teams aren't going to go play a Bonnie Eagle or a Thornton or anything like that. So, we've got a little more flexibility in our scheduling, I think, than they do, and that helps too.
Yeah, and you're a coach. Your team has kind of been on the cusp of B and C. You've gone. Seems like every time there's an enrollment,
we go somewhere else.
You go up or you go down. So you're familiar with both levels.
Yeah, we're pretty steady in the mid 500s now, and with the new kind of numbers they've used recently, we're more in the middle of the pack of enrollment. Yeah. So I would expect that, we would stay in C, whether that's north or south, who knows. But, we started to kind of even out a little bit there. But, yeah, we bounced around. It's tough, with a lot of different opponents. Preparing for games becomes tough because every year you see some different people.
Sure.
You don't have as much to go on. So,
yeah. Huddle probably helps with that.
Yeah, it does. Helps a ton.
Yes, it does.
Let's kind of look through each division, starting with Class D. Can anybody beat Wells, Randy?
I don't think so, no. I think it's a battle for that number 2-3 spot there. Of course, Madison held that position pretty strongly last year.
Right.
They're going to drop back. This year was the graduation of some exceptional athletes. So the first team you look at is Lisbon. They were number 3 last year. They have Lucas Francis back at quarterback this year. They have some kids back on the line, some of his weapons back. So I think that's the first team you look to, but don't sleep on Mountain Valley. Don't sleep on Spruce Mountain. I think Poland's going to be better. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be as competitive as those two teams. But that's going to be the most interesting part is who's going to battle for that number 2 or 3 spot. It just seems like Wells just kind of reloads for that wing tee every year, and they're just so tough to. It's kind of a snowball rolling downhill. It's so tough to stop it.
Yeah. You look at the fact that they lost a player in Nolan Potter, who was as good as he was, but then you remember just how convincingly they were beating these teams. It wasn't like they were edging, the Madisons and the Foxcrofts out there. Like they were best by leaps and bounds. So even if they lose some key players from that team, I think Tyler Bridge was their second best runner. He's back, and they're not going to miss too much.
Yeah. How about Oak Hill and Winthrop Monmouth, who now has some Halldale kids as well on that team?
Yeah, those are 2 intriguing teams. They had 2 first-year starters last year at quarterback. Winthrop Monmouth had Keegan Choate, who was a sophomore. He's junior now. And Oak Hill had a freshman, Gavin Rostron. I thought both those quarterbacks looked pretty impressive last year. But for Oak Hill, the question is they have a pretty inexperienced line in front of him, and he doesn't have the targets that he had last year. You probably saw Darren Bailey play at him out. I mean, that was a guy who could bail you out of any situation.
Yeah, and Poirier was kind of the safety valve, and also
right.
very important in his pass protection.
Right.
He doesn't have him to rely on anymore.
So there's going to be a lot on him. He looked like he was a poised freshman, had the size, the build, and everything. Don't know if he'll have the weapons to hang with these teams. And Winthrop Monmouth, Keegan Choate is a really good runner and passer for them, and he does have some weapons. Ryan Baird had a big game against Oak Hill last year. He's a big play guy. So I think Winthrop Monmouth, between those 2, I would think is the more competitive right now, and the more likely to challenge for, like you said, that 2, 3, 4 spot.
Yeah, I would definitely include Winthrop Monmouth in there. Dave St. Hilaire, the head coach there, says they have as many receivers as they've ever had since he's been there. So Choate should have a lot of help. The big thing they want to do this year is run the ball better. I think 3.4 is kind of their team mantra. They were 3.4 average per carry last year. They don't want to be that this year. And most of that was because of Choate. If it wasn't for Choate, they would have been around 3, maybe 2.5. Mm-hmm. They wanted to get some help for him this year, get some running backs that can help the running game. If they do, they could be pretty tough.
Yeah. We played them in the preseason in our scrimmage, and they're a pretty physical team, too. They have a couple of big tight ends. And some of the kids from Halldale are bigger linemen. Those are the type of kids, they haven't played a lot, so when they get some coaching towards the end of the year, they might be pretty good. And Choate's a real good athlete back there. If you have a running quarterback going into the end of the season, when you tend to run the ball a little bit more and it becomes a little bit more of a ground game and the weather's a factor, that's a kid who could be really good I think in a big game later in the year. Same with Francis from Lisbon. That's a team I wouldn't count out, in the playoffs. They've got a little bit of size, too, so that's another team that might be able to hang with them.
Yeah, they're a downhill football team built for the playoffs, for sure.
And you mentioned Madison. Yeah, they lost some big playmakers with Sean Whalen, who was a Fitzpatrick Trophy semifinalist, Evan Bess at quarterback, a couple guys on the offensive line, and Matt Oliver and Max Shibley. Eric Westcott moves from wingback to quarterback for them, which shouldn't be a big thing because the way they run their pistol offense, the quarterback is basically another running back. Brad Peters moves from the offensive line to fullback and kind of takes that Whalen spot. Lucas Murray's a returner on the line, so they should be in the playoff mix. But whether they kind of are a solid number 2 like they were last year behind Wells is probably not going to happen. In the North, I think everyone kind of thinks Foxcroft is still the team to beat.
Yeah, it seems like Foxcroft, maybe Bucksport. Yeah. That's it seems like kind of a carbon copy of last year.
Yeah, we saw Foxcroft at our MCI up at Foxcroft for the exhibition game. Foxcroft has some really good athletes on the perimeter. The Smith kid, his older brother, was the receiver a few years ago that went to Maine.
Yeah.
I think his name's Hyatt Smith. He's a pretty good wideout on the outside. The quarterback throws a pretty good ball. It's a pretty athletic team. I would imagine that the other teams in D North will have a tough time matching up with them.
Yeah, he made some plays against Wells in that final. Now the game was so out of hand early on that who knows how much that affected it. But yeah, when they started to get some success moving the ball late, he was the guy who was making those plays. So.
Okay. Let's look at Class C. Coach, you guys get a good test with the defending state champions, Maine Central Institute.
Yeah, right
there in week 1 in a crossover game. What have you seen out of them that is going to present you a challenge this week?
They're really big. Up front, I think most of their guys are bigger than our biggest linemen probably. So they have a lot of size across the front 5. The Buzzle kid for them is a fullback. They'd moved from the line back to fullback, kind of in their playoff run last year. And, he's a tank there. I mean, if you think, like, we kind of compared him the other day to some of the kids. Winslow kind of had a run on big fullbacks.
Sure.
Bazanson, I remember, was one of them in there. They had a few right in a row, just big physical runners. And the tailback's good size, too. So the quarterback returns from last year, they really have some things they can do on offense. They can run the ball right at you. And defensively, they're pretty stout. We saw them on tape in the scrimmage against Bapst, and they didn't really give up many yards. And they gave up a few big plays against Foxcroft, but they're just really big. So, they get a lot of size and some experience back. And, if you can run the football and stop the run, that's a pretty good formula for a playoff run. So it can be tough.
A lot of people are calling you guys one of the favorites in your division. How do you feel about that?
I think our division's pretty tough. Cape and Gardner, certainly going to have a lot to say about that as well. And, there's some other teams in there, Freiburg, and Morse had a good record last year. Those aren't going to be easy games either. And York, with the new coach down there, I think there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm. Matt Nelson used to play there back when I was at Leavitt. We're not going to have an easy road, but, I like what I've seen out of our team so far. We're pretty athletic on the perimeter. We've got a lot of guys. We've got a good combination of size and speed. And, our guys aren't huge up front, but they're tough. And a lot of guys, even though we're young, we only have 7 seniors. We have a lot of guys back on our defense, 7 starters, and really, 9 or 10 guys who played quite a bit of football there last year. So,
Speaking of young, you have a young quarterback who you're very familiar with,
the
sophomore, your son. And Biel can answer this as well.
Yeah.
Are you guys more prone to be reluctant to have an underclassman, a freshman, or a sophomore take over a quarterback as opposed to another position? And kind of what kind of decision-making goes into having such a young position player there?
Yeah, the last sophomore we started was Ben Lucas. So
that turned out all right.
We were 2-7 his sophomore year, and he's probably watching this, so you know that's true. But so it's interesting. We're kind of in a similar situation. We've got a sophomore and a junior that have been battling it out, and so we've got a really, really good senior group. So if the sophomore is kind of taking his lumps and making mistakes, it's like we're not really forfeiting this year just to get him experience because we could be pretty good this year. So Ben's sophomore year, we were kind of didn't have a lot of talent, so we were just like, hey, he's going to be really, really good. He's going to learn on the fly. So it is tricky, because sophomores are going to make mistakes, and it's just a matter of comparing the two and thinking about it's kind of a long-term plan too, not only like for their careers, but week 1 is one thing, but both Mike and I and everyone's hoping to be playing in early, mid, and maybe late November. So you got to kind of see what gives you the best chance at that time of the season. And build toward that. So, and I know, Coach Hathaway's son Wyatt, is a good quarterback for him. And, there's really, I don't know if there's anybody ahead of him as far as juniors and seniors are concerned. I know there's a kid behind him that's pretty good. So, it's almost a no-brainer for Mike, which makes it easy. Because I was a coach's son that played quarterback, and you hear a little bit about it when you start as a sophomore. So, and I'm sure the opponents will talk to Wyatt a little bit about it if they're doing their job. So, I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, we've never started a sophomore. We've always, since I've been there, we've always had a junior or seniors. So probably the last experience I really have of that, I don't know if you guys remember Dave Chase, who was at Oak Hill and played at Husson for a while. I was at Oak Hill when Dave started as a freshman for us there. I think, Wyatt was our backup last year, and he started a couple games last year and played a fair amount at the end of the season. Our starting quarterback had a broken foot. So, he's got a little more experience maybe than, somebody who's fresh and new to the spot or whatever. But, you got to ease him into a little bit. You can't just throw him into the fire too much. I think you have to, we were trying to keep the play selection a little bit limited, and you try to limit their runs maybe a little bit early. But, by midseason, you want him rolling full tilt. So, we've let him go out there and, he's doing things at the line of scrimmage and, we have a lot of reads built into our offense, and he's making those reads. And, we've got a lot of good weapons around him, so we've just kind of told him, your job is to get the ball in their hands. And, we're going to try to protect you as well as we can up front. And if you can survive in that time between the time you get the snap and the time you get the ball to them, then you're in pretty good shape. But he, he's a competitive guy, and, he was around 7-on-7 and camps the last few years. So, we feel pretty good about it.
And he probably grew up watching a lot of good quarterbacks you had kind of do their thing. So
yeah, he has. Tyler Angel, I think, was around. That was kind of when Wyatt was starting to be around the field, and then my cousin Evan Barker was our quarterback for a while, and he and Wyatt still stay in touch and are pretty close. So he's grown up with that, and then it helps that I've coached a lot of his groups all the way up through. So he's run the spread offense really since he was a fourth grader. So it's not like he's gets out of middle school and they were running the eye there and now he's running the spread. Like he knows what he's doing. So if you know what you're doing, I think that makes up for some of the just lack of being older.
Drew, the Gardner made a run late in the season and made it to the regional final. They got a chance
thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
Mike got your vote.
That's awesome. That was great.
Thanks.
Do the Tigers have it in them again?
Coach here.
Surprise us.
That's a really intriguing team because, like you said, they kind of had both ends of the spectrum last season. They looked really, really rough to start. I mean, they lost some close games, but it looked like just a lot was not working for them. And then it did start to work from at the end of the season. And their defense was so strong, and they have a lot of those players back. So, I mean, when I was talking to Joe White and he was going through the players who were back, I was like, oh, okay, that's a pretty good line. It's a pretty good backing core. It's a pretty good secondary. And, Coach, I just want to say, do they project to you to be that same sort of blue-collar, hard-nosed defensive team that they were last year?
I think so. They have, I think it's Garrett is his first name, Mayhew, the linebacker back, and he was a force on defense. And they have really good schemes defensively. So, you start with good players and good schemes, and, it's well coached. They're not huge up front, but they're physical, and they like to get after it, and they can move around a little bit. They like to stunt, which can give some teams some problems. But they're pretty good just at all levels of their defense. It's not like, they have a real good front but not a good secondary. They got some good players at each level, so and a lot of experience coming back. So I think they'll be pretty tough. I think that's one of the best defensive teams in our league, no question.
Yeah, that line is a good point because I remember doing a story on the defensive line last year and talking to those kids, and I was taller than some of the people there, but they're not big guys, but guys like Dylan Spencer, Roy Appleby. I think Austin Weymouth is also on that end. Those were guys who really they operated well within the scheme, and they could do both. They could run, they could stop the run, they can penetrate and rush the pass. So that defensive line did a lot for them. So if that's still there for them, they could be that same team that could win very physical games. Yeah.
I think the North in Class C is a lot like your division, Coach, in that there's no clear-cut favorite. MCI is defending state champs, has a lot of guys back, and you mentioned Isaac Buzzle moving from the line to fullback, and he's just a terror on the defensive line as well.
He is.
Ryan Friend, who started as a freshman last year at quarterback, is returning for them. Winslow is going to be in the mix because they're Winslow, and they're always going to be in that mix. They have a kid at tackle, Cam Winslow, who might be the best offensive tackle in the state, 3-year starter. Herman's going to be improved, I think. And Nokomis make the playoffs last year with 6 wins, their first winning season, first playoff trip. Have Andrew Haney at quarterback, who's in his 4th year starting now, and a couple good receivers in Brock Graves and Chance Graves. And I think Waterville is going to continue to get improved with a few guys who have been starting since freshman and sophomore year, and like John Evans on the line and Jack Thompson at quarterback.
Yeah, I saw Winslow against Mesolonsky on film, and that big number 77, I assume that's what you're talking about. He was moving some people around, and they just the offense is so basic and so easy, but it's just tough to defend. They've got 2 tight ends. It's wishbone. It looks like it's 1985, but it's dive and then it's dive keep and then it's double dive, and they're so big and physical and they're so well coached at it that it's just a matter of time until somebody blows an assignment defensively and they pop one on you. And they're physical on defense. They returned a couple kicks for touchdowns against Mass. Anyway, they seem like they're in mid-season form already, and so and the quarterback's a good athlete. I can't remember his name.
Colby Palmer.
Yeah, he's a good athlete. He can run the football and he throws it a little bit too. So they'll be tough to defend for sure. And I don't know too much about MCI. You would, but they seem to be the 2 I think on paper that people are looking at as the favorites there.
I wouldn't count out FDI either. I think they lost some good players, but they still had a pretty good junior class. And particularly some of their guys on defense, I think, are back. Yeah. They run that T offense.
Actually, they're not anymore.
Oh, they're going to open it up?
No, I saw them opening it up a little spread offense against Waterville in an exhibition scrimmage. So new coach,
right?
New system.
But I wouldn't count them out. That's a team that's plays smart football, I think, every year.
Sure.
So.
Okay, let's get to Class B. Coach, your conference, the PTCB, we've talked about it a little. There's no clear-cut favorite. State Cony's case for us here.
Yeah, we feel pretty good about our offensive line and our defensive front. We've got 7 of our 8 guys back defensively in the front 8 in our 4-4 or 5-3 scheme, whatever we're playing. we're led by a bunch of seniors. Whenever you have that situation, you feel pretty good. We've been in the weight room, and they've been pretty consistent all summer at 7-on-7 and passing camps and so forth. So we feel pretty good about that. Anytime you're breaking in a new quarterback, regardless of who it is, and that's still kind of up in the air, it's a little unsettling not knowing exactly how they're going to perform on a Friday night. But much like Mike's situation, we've got some skilled kids around, whoever it is, that can make some plays and should make things easier on them. They're not going to be playing quarterback behind a porous offensive line and have no one to throw to. That's not a good situation. Whoever it is should have some talent around them. But we've got question marks like everyone, and everyone in our league, whether it's Skowhegan losing 2 or 3 of the best receivers, in Central Maine last year. Lawrence is a team. Like Ballard was kind of the focus last year, but Isaiah Schooler, their run game's always good. They play great defense there. Brewers big and physical again. They lost a couple of good running backs, but they seem to replace them. So. I don't envy you guys having to make picks week 1 because in our league I really don't know. It's really, really hard to tell. And, you can read MBR or whatever outlet it might be, and the experts chime in on what they think. But that's based on 7-on-7. That's based on their own observations of their own team's scrimmage. So we'll start finding things out here in 48 hours or so. And in our division, it could be any team. I didn't mention Brunswick, who knocked us out of the playoffs last year. And I've heard they're in a little bit of spread, a little shotgun, kind of similar wing tee scheme. So they're changing things up a little bit too down there, and they're big and physical. They got a ton of skill guys back, so it's really anyone's game. And I wouldn't want to have to predict who's going to win.
Yeah, so Drew, like Coach mentioned, you got Skowhegan with Marcus Christopher, one of the best quarterbacks in state, returning after throwing 39 touchdowns and only 5 picks last year. But his top 3 receivers all graduated, so. He returns one guy with a lot of varsity experience in Colby Miller, and then it's a bunch of new guys. And Skowhegan's kind of looking at, and they were a rare team that made the state championship game in giving up, 4 games of 50 points. And Coach Libby, I was talking to him, and he's like, we can't do that anymore. We can't get into shootouts with teams. Lawrence, another team that, Coach John Hersom there said, we got to show up our defense. We didn't have a lot of typical Lawrence defensive games last year. But like BL said, they have a strong running game. Mount Blue, I think, will be improved. Messalonski might take a step back just because they graduated so much talent and have lower numbers this year.
Yeah, and when we think about Cony, especially on the offensive side, it's almost the reverse of the Oak Hill situation we're talking about, where they have the quarterback, they just need the weapons to make themselves known. Whoever is the quarterback for your team has some good kids to go to. Reed Hopkins and Mike Wozniak.
Yeah, Mike and Matt Wozniak, and Mike's seen them at camp. They're just none of them. If they walked in here, you wouldn't think that guy's probably a really high quality receiver. They're kind of unassuming. Not big, not overly physical, but they can run and catch and block and make plays. And I'm glad we have them. They're tough kids, and they play both sides of the ball. 2 of them play outside linebacker at 170 pounds, in our scheme, and so. We've got a couple other seniors, Chris Sponsler and Johnny Hansen and Dustin Dyer, so a couple of young guys coming up as well. So, and if Riley Geyer doesn't play quarterback, then he'll be a receiver. He's a sophomore, 6'1", 190, can really run. Whoever it is should have some playmakers around him, and we think a pretty good offensive line. We returned 6 guys that played, 4 or more games last year on the offensive line due to injuries. A couple of guys played, 4 each. So they're all back. A couple of them are, 3 of them are 3-year starters now. So that makes you feel pretty good. And like I said, last year our defense was probably better than our offense, and it hasn't been like that for a while with us. I'm not sure why, but we haven't been able to really stop the run all that effectively. And for large stretches last year, our defense really kind of dominated. And it feels good when you're the offensive play caller and you don't feel like you have to score. Like Coach Libby's saying, you don't have to score because your defense can get a stop. And we saw that in our scrimmage and exhibition. We've been pretty good up front defensively. And so hopefully that continues as the season gets going.
Has this been the result of because you had to play some freshmen and sophomores in key spots the last couple of years? Is a lot of that just it's the flip side of that? Yeah, you take your lumps early on, but when these guys get to their junior and senior years, they're a lot more experienced than some people in that age might be.
I remind Nick Mills of that. He's a 3-year starter, 2-time state champion wrestler. He played right tackle against Austin Lufkin for 2 games that year, and he got thrown around a little bit. Nick doesn't get thrown around by many people, so now he's a senior, and he's maybe not quite as big or the same weight as Austin Lufkin. But I'm like, hey, you're the Austin Lufkin maybe in the league this year, so get in there and throw those sophomores around and get to the quarterback. So I think that when they were sophomores and they're starting, I was like, all right, we'll see how they do. They certainly earned their stripes, and now they're seniors. We have a boatload of confidence. We have the McFarland brothers, one's a sophomore, sorry, junior, one's a senior. They've played a ton for us. Devin Thomas is an all-conference, defensive tackle that plays center for us as well. So we've got a lot of guys back. Jake Mills is Nick's, nephew, cousin, I should say. So a lot of, brothers and cousins playing the offensive line for us, and that's good too. There's a little familiarity there, and they work pretty well together.
Mm-hmm.
Randy, we'll start with you on Class B South. Is Marchwood heads and everything above?
It's head and shoulders.
Head and shoulders, everything. They're so good. I don't have words for it. Yeah.
They're the favorite. I think a lot of people consider Kennebunk pretty close to their level. Yeah. They've tripped Bush back, their quarterback. He's been around 3 years or something.
3-year
like that?
starter, yeah. We played them in the playoffs when he was a sophomore. He started that year. I think their quarterback had gotten hurt earlier in that year, and of course Joe Bush is his dad, who coached with John Moore at Massabesic when they had their state championship run with Otash. So, and Joe's on Coach Raff's staff down at Kennebunk now. So that's a real good staff.
Can't sleep on Joe Raff.
Right. I wouldn't count Kennebunk out of anything, even if Marshwood is more talented. Especially with Bush being a 3-year starter at Q, that's a good advantage for them. And that's a team that runs a lot of option, and sometimes the option can even the playing field a little bit. They're pretty good at it. Bush
is a big name in Kennebunk, so.
And Bedford's another team you might want to consider there. They're going to get a lift from their new turf. Maybe if
you guys will christen.
Maybe BL can curb that a little bit when they play them week 1 or
week two. Their first game on Waterhouse.
Their first game on Waterhouse Field. But we'll talk a little bit about this with Lewiston. There's a little bit of it pumps you up a little bit when you have a new field to play on and everything. Pumps the community up and re-energizes a program. That's a program that's been kind of slowly back on the way up, and maybe this is kind of the thing to get them over the hump there and get them in there with Marshwood and Kennebunk.
I believe their quarterback is back as well, Edgerton, right?
And he was very productive last year.
It's a good place to start.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that Class A North. With Lewiston's got to be in the mix of wide open division, right?
I consider Portland a favorite because they have pretty much everybody back up front. Now, last year, they kind of lingered around and let teams like Edward Little and Oxford Hills kind of grab some of the early headlines because they had questions at quarterback. Well, they still kind of have questions at quarterback this year. They don't have an athlete like Teron Moss to step in and take over that role. So, but they have at least the foundation of a really good offensive line. They had the Elowich kid back, who was one of the most dynamic players in the conference last year. So I still think they're a favorite. You can't count on Wyndham just because every year in that conference it's been either Portland or Wyndham under the current format. Right. So they lose Bernier, quarterback, and some other really good players. You can't count them out. I think Oxford Hills is probably the most likely team to challenge Portland this year. They have Colton Carson back at quarterback, his second year in their system. That's going to help them a lot. They think they have more weapons around them this year. Of course, they graduated Dawson Stevens, who was one of the better running backs in the conference last year, but he was hurt a lot last year. So a lot of these kids that are coming up this year had that experience from replacing them last year. There's some questions up front. Mark Soren says, tell me how my offensive line's going to hold up, and I'll tell you how well we play this year. Their defense should still be pretty solid. It's a question of, this Oxford Hills is last few years has really hurt themselves as much as other teams have hurt them with turnovers, with dumb penalties, with mental mistakes. They're really trying to eliminate those. If they can eliminate those, they could be the team to challenge Portland. I think Lewiston, as you mentioned, could be very tough this year. They have Tanner Cortez back at quarterback. They have Hunter Landry. He's kind of an all-purpose back. He's kind of, maybe the best, most dynamic athlete in the conference this year. They have some key cornerstones on their offensive line back. A few other kids, a few other skill positions to replace, but these are juniors that are stepping up that they really feel are ready to fill that role. They'll have team speed all over the field on a new turf field this year. And as we mentioned with Biddeford, that often gives a school and a team a lift. So there's a lot of excitement in Lewiston this year. They play Oxford Hills week 1, so they'll know where they stand. Both teams will have a pretty good idea where they stand after that. Yale, of course, they were the regular season champions last year.
Graduated some talented players.
Yeah, the big three, I call them Hartley, Bell, and Begos as well. Caden Begos, the running back. So they they're pretty tough up front too, and a lot of times in line scrimmages where you really need to have that experience and talent coming back. So I'm not expecting them to take a huge step back, but I think that conference is ultimately going to come down to Portland, Oxford Hills, and possibly Wyndham this year.
It's so weird for me, and it's been a couple of years now that we talk about Class A North without mentioning Bangor. It just doesn't feel right when Bangor is not in the mix.
And I think Dave Morris is going to get them back on the right track. Just from following him in baseball all these years, whether it's Legion or high school baseball, he's got one of the best programs, if not the best program in the state up there in Bangor. And I have a little doubt. I don't know if they'll be back to being Bangor the dominant force, but I think they will be much more respectable in the near future.
Yeah. I just know it's so much more fun to cover when Bangor is in the mix. Just everyone gets up for that game. It's just it's everybody's rival in the North. In the South, there's still the big three: Bonnie Eagle, Thornton Academy, and Scarborough. Or is we're hearing maybe Sanford's in that mix to give them a push.
Yeah, I think everything I hear is Thornton Academy had some kids transfer out. As a matter of fact, some went to Portland, but they're still loaded from everything that I hear. And it sounds like Scarborough's kind of playing with a chip on their shoulder, which they played with a lot last year.
You win the state game by 100 points. Why would you have a chip on your shoulder?
Well, because a lot of people had Bonnie Eagle and Thornton rated ahead of them all last year and have them rated ahead of them again this year. So, you got to figure those big three in. Sanford seems like more of a consensus number 4, but maybe they sneak into that group and challenge those.
They have another new field kind of team.
Yeah,
new car smell effect.
Car smell effect, exactly. So, but regardless, whoever comes out of the South, they're just there's such a big advantage for that team.
Right. And that Flaker kid for Scarborough is one of the most.
He's as fast as anybody.
I don't think I've ever seen anybody get the ball and accelerate quicker than him. He's like the most dynamic player.
He was terrific in that final. Anytime he touched the ball,
and you figure they'll use him so much more this year. They just kind of kept him special teams, a couple sweep stuff last year. Now get him really involved in the offense.
I think a lot of Bonnie Eagle will be. They lost some pretty good guys in the front, so how are they going to replace those guys? And I think they'll get them coached up, and they'll be pretty good by the end of the year. But Maturo is a pretty good athlete at quarterback. He's the point guard on the basketball team. He's going to be a junior. He reminds, as a runner, kind of like Doler a little bit. That guy that you can just get in the hole, and then all of a sudden he squirts out of there, and he's got a strong lower body. That's a kid that could make some plays. For them out of that spot. So it'll be interesting to see where they are at the end of the year. They replace a lot of guys, but I think they always have a lot of talent behind it. So that could be maybe a late season surge by them.
Coach Cooper will have them playing their best.
They coach them up, Okay. That is going to do it for us. Thanks for watching if you're watching on Facebook Live. If you're listening on the podcast, thanks for joining us there. Remember, you can stick with us all season with a variety of ways. You can catch Randy's work in sunjournal.com, Drew and I at centralmaine.com, and you can also, on Friday nights on the WCSH News, catch Drew and I in the new 5th quarter. We'll be doing some stuff with them this year. Enjoy whatever team you watch this year. For Drew, for Randy, for the coaches, I'm Travis. Thanks for joining us.